Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for our Lean Startup webcast. Today's topic is turning an experiment into a lifestyle brand. I'm Felicia Chenko, Production Manager of Lean Startup Company. This webcast is part of a series featuring speakers from Lean Startup Week, happening October 31st to November 6th in San Francisco. Please visit leanstartup.co for more information. Matt Breimer co-founded General Assembly, where he leads global partnership and business development and social impact. And he is the co-founder of Daybreaker, a global community and lifestyle brand producing conscious morning experiences around the world. Aubrey Smith is the founder of an innovation strategy consulting firm and is an esteemed Lean Startup coach and faculty member. A few housekeeping notes. We'll be taking questions from the audience via the live chats. If you'd like to ask a question, please flag it by starting with a Q: before your question. This is a 45-minute program, and the recording will be available after this live webcast. Take it away, Aubrey and Matt.
Thanks, Felicia. Welcome, everyone, and thank you, Matt, for joining us. So today we are joined by, I think, a very appropriate guest for Cinco de Mayo, Matt Breimer, co-founder of General Assembly and now the wildly successful lifestyle brand Daybreaker. And if you've not joined him at a Daybreaker party, or like me, daybreaking away with a band of toddlers instead of cool people like him, Daybreaker in a nutshell is a sober early morning dance party, or more precisely, a community of early risers that choose to dance their faces off before work or to feel gloriously healthy while doing so. All very good and well. But if you're wondering what I was a couple months ago, Matt, sorry to say this, is that really a company? Is that really a movement? The answer is yes, I think. Most of your morning parties across the globe are sold out. You're present in more than 10 cities, which is amazing. And you've formed some really major partnerships with lifestyle brands, which I'm sure you'll talk about. But Matt, let's kick this off with a very serious topic, your Cinco de Mayo plans. I'm dying to know. I have a sneaking suspicion you and your Daybreakers have beat us all to the party. What does a day like today look like for you?
Sure. So, this morning we had 700 people in New York show up. Over 700 actually, show up in Irving Plaza, which is one of the biggest concert venues in New York City, right in Union Square, for a Daybreaker 90s edition in celebration of Cinco de Mayo. And I think we sold it out last week. It was incredible. It was one of the most high energy morning Daybreakers that we've ever done. It concluded with a team Backstreet Boys choreographed dance, which was pretty amazing.
I'm quite jealous.
So I think I'm gonna lay low tonight and chill, after this morning.
Awesome. What time did that start?
So we kicked it off at 6 a.m. We do an hour of yoga or fitness for usually a couple hundred people, and then the full dance party for everyone else happens from 7 to 9 a.m. with kind of a concluding ceremony. We actually had an astronaut who had done 4 spacewalks in the 90s speak as kind of like the final touch point. So it was a pretty special morning.
Okay, that's awesome. So in the spirit of Lean Startup, really, you've described that Daybreaker started kind of like an experiment in 2013, and you had a hypothesis. I'd love for you to talk about what that hypothesis was. And then I'd love to talk about how you went from kind of couch conversation about an idea then to kind of a live experiment. So let's start with kind of your original idea. What was that?
Sure. So the original idea was just one of these things that just kind of, comes to you. It was really an art project, and it was a social experiment when we started Daybreaker. We didn't have an intention to say, from the very beginning, this is going to become a business, this is going to become a startup, this is going to, employ a bunch of people around the world. It was really this concept of looking at I think 2 things. One, kind of somewhat being inspired by Burning Man and seeing what's possible in terms of human creativity and in self-expression and in openness and in creating an environment that allows people to become like more fulfilled versions of themselves, and somewhat being inspired by that. But then also looking at, I think, like the problems and the negativity and the exclusivity and all the kind of bad negative things that surround typical nightlife. And especially in New York City, a lot of traditional nightlife in New York is self-destructive behavior, mean people, belligerent individuals, mean bouncers, drugs and alcohol, late nights, et cetera, et cetera. And yet, at the end of the day, pretty much everyone still loves to dance and loves music if in the right environment. And so the concept was really just, after a few conversations I was having with my friend Rada, we thought, hey, why does nightlife have to have all these negative aspects? There's already nightlife, but maybe there's where's their morning life? What if we could take out all the negative aspects of of the nightclub and the nightlife, and what you normally associate with a typical dance party, take all the negatives, bring in much more positives, and rather than have it be at the end of the night how you end your day, what if we could create an experience how you start your morning? And mornings, think about the morning is a typically like untouched time. It's this empty space. It's a typically pretty boring, pretty routine, monotonous time. Maybe if you're diligent, you hit the gym and you do something productive, but it's still probably pretty routine. Or else you hit the subway or hop in the BART or something and just go to work with a cup of coffee. And so we thought, well, what if we could create the most amazing possible morning experience to start off your day? What would that be? We thought, well, it should probably be a dance party. And then we just kind of kept riffing on that concept. And the first event was really an experiment. We spent maybe $1,000 or $2,000 in all, broke even, hoped that people would show up for it. This was December of 2013. It was snowing in the basement of a little diner called Coffee Shop on Union Square, for those of you who are familiar. 180 people showed up, and it worked. It kind of validated the concept. So we decided to keep doing more and continue growing the experiment.
So, I mean, I've bemoaned nightlife in New York for decades, or a decade or more. And I have not gotten myself to kind of go out and actually try to test something in reality. But you're a tester. What is the kind of ethos of that? How do you take that kind of just initial seed idea and put into action a real live test and then build a company off of it? So you've got your first test, everybody shows up, it's a wild success, but then what? How does that become the next steps of a global company that's now growing with partnerships with brands like Nike?
Sure. So a couple of things. One, before we even launched our first event, before we threw our first morning experience, Rod and I sat down and we came up with 5 core values. And these are actually somewhat inspired by the 10 principles of Burning Man. But we came up with 5 core values that we thought, okay, no matter what Daybreaker becomes, we don't know what it's going to become. We have this experiment, we kind of have an idea, but who knows what it'll grow into. It could be a total failure and then it doesn't matter, or it could be something huge and big and long-lasting and a phenomenon, in which case the values do matter. And so we decided, all right, we're going to come up with 5 values, and those 5 values were, in no particular order, camaraderie, self-expression, wellness, mindfulness, and mischief. And so we thought, okay, these are going to be our North Star. No matter what this is, any new product we launch, any new event we run, any strategic decision we make, any of our marketing copy, any of the website we put out, whatever it is, everything needs to be pointing toward these values. And if something that we're doing is not in the direction of these values, then it's off. Like, let's start with that value, start with that mission, and we'll go from there. And then, we kind of kept that as like our guiding principle, guiding light. And so we did the first event, and it was an experiment. Luckily, when you produce experiences and you do events, if you structure them right, they don't require a lot of upfront capital, especially if you sell tickets. You can maybe put up some capital for venue or talent or whatever, but the first event it was basically break even. So we said, okay, we didn't lose money. That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
let's do another one, and we'll learn. We'll figure out we'll get feedback. We did a survey. We asked all of our friends what worked, what didn't, what you like, what didn't you like. We kind of refined the model and the skeleton, and we threw another one. And we had more people come. We encouraged people to tell their friends. We actually avoided press for the first 6 months of Daybreaker's existence, for the first 6 events or something, because we really wanted to keep the community tight and build up like a tight seed of an audience, friends of friends, influencers, make sure that we were building a core, like true believers, true fanatics, if you will, people who are really into this, and their friends and their friends. And we knew that once press hit, it would get that big splash, but it would kind of potentially, like, once we knew that we had something, that we didn't want the core community to be crowded out with people who are just there to do a bucket list, or for people who are kind of tourists, so to speak. Oh, well, check this thing out. We knew that we had something special, and we needed to keep the momentum and the inertia until we got to the point where we said, okay, the community is strong enough, the experience is tight enough that when newcomers start coming in because of press and wider kind of mass understanding of this thing, mass awareness of this thing, that it's not going to impact or detriment the core essence and the core community and the core early adoptership of what this is.
So what was that? So what kind of indicated that to you? I mean, and I know it's probably not an easy thing to quantify, but was there a metric you were looking for? Was there a qualitative aspect of kind of what you were doing that kind of signaled to you that you were on the right track?
Sure. So one of our KPIs at all of our events, especially early on, that we always look at to gauge the effectiveness and the success of the event. One of those key metrics is actually the number of smiles on the dance floor, and that might sound silly, but but if you literally look around and say, like, all right, I'm going to pick like a window with my hand, something like, look at this box of people in the audience. Within a 10-second period, how many of those people have like a big grin on their face? And if it's low, then like the party is not the right vibe. It's not Daybreaker enough. We're doing something wrong. But if we see like a lot of smiles per capita, you know what I mean, within an audience, that means like, okay, we're creating positivity, we're creating joy. The mission of Daybreaker is about transforming people's days, giving them positivity and spirit, and allowing them to connect and basically become better versions of themselves through really transformational experiences. And there's a lot of positivity and joy that we want to imbue into people. So that's one. The other is, more traditional things like retention, how many people are coming back, how many people at the end of the event, we say how many people have been to Daybreaker before versus how many people are new. We try to keep it at about 50-50. If you're too high, if you have too many people returning and a too low of a proportion new, then you might not be growing your audience, and maybe maybe you've hit your max potential. But then if it's the other direction, if it's too low, it means that like people are not returning. It wasn't a great enough of an experience. Maybe we're now tracking NPS on all of our events.
Yeah.
So that's
awesome. Things. I love it because I work with a lot of companies, and particularly in enterprises, when you're going to market with a product that really is an unknown marketplace, where you're changing behavior entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Your metrics are going to be wildly different. You have to invent metrics. So most people are actually quite reticent to do that. So I think that's wild. How did you get there? I mean, how do you talk to your team about smiles?
So we always have like a recap brunch after every Daybreaker, where we have our whole team and our DJ and our kind of core talent and some of our performers and volunteers. You always spend an hour or so after the event recapping, when everything is fresh in our minds, and we go through everything. And I've been building community and producing kind of transformational experiences or experiences that move people forward in some way for pretty much all of my adult career, and so everyone in our team is really, really thoughtful about looking at every aspect of the experience. One of the things I talk about a lot is, there's UX, of course, but typically people would think about UX, it's what happens here on a little glowing screen. We think about, experience design. It's about the lighting, it's about the check-in flow, it's about the coat check, it's about the smiles on the dance floor, it's about the music and the vibe, and how people leave, and how many people like receive hugs on their way in. And how the kind of run of show happens is this whole 360 experiential aspect that we have to look at. And so we're very, very diligent about going through basically the whole run of show and going through all aspects of the event afterward and talking about everything. And so there's always fun insights to hear from the team, little epiphanies, little realizations that don't always come from me, come from different people. One of the things that one of our team members said recently that we use constantly is Daybreaker doesn't sell a product, we sell a feeling. It's not about what you see necessarily on stage or the music you hear, it's how you feel by the end. So what we want to look at, another metric, is we kind of look and observe the crowd on their way in. Typically, it's 7 a.m., people haven't had their first cup of coffee yet. They maybe have never been to one of these things before, they have no idea what's going on, they're kind of groggy, they're a little nervous maybe, they haven't been. And we compare that snapshot to what happens at the end and how people look and feel and their kind of physical vibe on the way out. Are they still smiling? Are they exuberant? Are they like chatty? Are they woken up? Are they feeling amazing and positive to go into their day?
Awesome. So what are the elements of your Daybreaker experience now, and how has that changed over the last couple of years? So you talked about some cool 90s experiences today. What are kind of across the globe, what are you guys doing?
Yeah. So all of our events have themes now, which we find is important. We're producing Daybreakers now, it depends on the month, but approximately like 10 events a month around the world, across 10 cities. Wow. In New York, we do events every 1 to 2 weeks. In other cities, we're more like once a month. But we found that having a strong theme makes a big difference. That differentiates each experience and gets people to return. We're very, very thoughtful and conscious of the music and of what the DJ's playing, and they're just kind of DJs that we curate. We're also very conscious of Daybreaker really being, in some ways, like an immersive theater experience. It's really a production. It's a show. And we keep it tight. Like every 10 to 15 minutes, something different is happening. And we have a script. So we have a whole run of shows. We send it to everyone. And every 10 to 15 minutes in the script is, okay, now the saxophones come out. Now we release the cryo tanks or something. Or now, like, we threw out the snap bracelet, or we gave out snap bracelets to everyone that you remember from the 90s today, or we threw out Beanie Babies in the crowd. And it's like we have these experiential elements that are different each time, but they're very scripted and are part of the whole experience. We also find that having a strong closing ceremony that brings everyone down and kind of grounds people with like somewhat of a meditative, contemplative 15 minutes is a really important thing. So after you're kind of adventuring in the dance floor, hopping around, super high energy, we take the final 15 minutes to sit down and give people kind of a little talk or an acoustic performance or some closing words that allows people to like let it sink in, and then it kind of like brings them back into reality, and then they take that inside and then go into their day.
That's quite incredible. I mean, there's no detail spared here. I mean, in some ways it sounds like you've learned quite a bit about kind of the idea of changing people's lives, but also doing that in a series of kind of events or different types of experiences. And I imagine some of that came from your experience at General Assembly. Mm-hmm. Kind of where in your career, how have you used your learning through the path of General Assembly to kind of build Daybreaker?
Sure, very good question. I would say two big areas come to mind. One is just the power of intentional community and transformational experiences. So by intentional community, I mean communities of people who are coming together because they share a common purpose or a common cause, and they are interested in spending time with each other. So let's say it's a high school or a neighborhood. I'm going to call those intentional communities because those are communities. People spend time and engage and have friendships and relationships and support each other. But they're in some ways communities of convenience. They just are the group of people that so happen to live there. Whereas intentional communities like a Daybreaker or General Assembly or a certain kind of festival or certain groups, they're people coming together not because of their geography necessarily or because their color of skin or any of those kind of more shallow level things, but because they believe and they participate in some sort of common value or common theme. And we saw that at General Assembly, people coming together who cared about their careers, they cared about learning new skills, they cared about transforming their careers for the better, they cared about they didn't want to stop learning just because college was over, and they wanted to pursue the skills and the inspiration that would make them relevant in the 21st century. And so with Daybreaker, it's people coming together because they want to live life differently. They want to start off their day in a really powerful way. They want to self-express. They want to be creative. They want to find like-minded people who are open and kind-hearted and can feel something awesome together. So that's a very, very powerful thing when you do it writ large. And then the other aspect of that, of course, is transformational experience. I think in-person physical experience is not given enough credit in today's world, and yet is becoming increasingly important in, I think, consumers' mind share. We're spending so much of our time online, so much of our time on these things. My girlfriend will often make comments that I'm spending too much time on my phone, and it's probably true. And it's a really good reminder. This thing is buzzing constantly. It's always demanding our attention. And the more that we put our lives online, I think the more that we actually seek and crave truly meaningful, truly like special in-person experiences where we're not on our phone, we're not on our computer, and we can come together as people to have something that blows the doors off, and that really is memorable. That like hits like the 9 or 10 in the NPS score that you remember and you want to tell people about, rather than like oh yeah, it was fine, but it was just part of my day. People want like really powerful special experiences. I think you're seeing that across the board. I mean, with General Assembly, the parallel there is we found that a lot of investors, a lot of people were saying, hey, the future of education is online. What are you doing building these offline campuses, doing in-person education? And at General Assembly, we actually are doing a lot of online education now, and we're expanding in that way in a big way, so we can reach people who are outside of our 15 metro areas. But turns out, when people are learning very difficult things and they're changing their careers and they're changing their lives and they're moving into new professions, learning how to code, what have you, turns out when they're learning hard stuff like that, they like to be around people. Who would have thought, right? And I think sometimes we forget that in our digitally focused age. But creating an environment, creating a space with real people interacting with each other, sharing that kind of camaraderie, there's a certain social, je ne sais quoi, if you will, that comes with sharing experience together, motivating each other in person, being able to ask someone a question that you can't find online. And it's a very powerful thing that I think has translated both well for GA and also well for Daybreaker.
Well, how have you kept, so that's actually the whole idea of technology being exponential for companies like yours, GA, is real. Most, I'm sure, of your investors are interested in your technology. How do you keep your company kind of grounded and focused on not just technology? I imagine that's somewhat hard on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. And especially if you want to hit, exponential growth, right? It's hard to do that with brick and mortar,
Right.
So you need technology to grow and to reach those large numbers for sure. And we are building a lot of we have a whole enterprise education department that does a lot of corporate training. And
can you talk a little bit about that for people who might not know? I'm familiar,
sure.
but talk about who you're working with and the like. That'd be great.
Sure. So we work with a good, pretty sizable proportion of the Fortune 500 now, and basically what we do is we'll work with these larger organizations to help them with change management, digital skills acquisition, helping them think through entrepreneurial leadership. And it's not consulting, but it's kind of transformational education for organizations. So you might be a big company and you have 500 marketers, and you've been around for 50 years, and you realize, oh, there's this internet thing, and we can't have a chief.
We gotta be in it.
we can't have a chief digital officer who just owns the digital. Digital is this thing that just needs to live horizontally across the entire organization. Everyone in the company needs to understand digital, understand how that works. So we need to take all these 500 marketers and make sure that they all become digital marketers. But how do you do that? Most corporate training and online training for organizations is not particularly good. And so what we've done is, General Assembly started by building our consumer brand and our consumer expertise and curriculum across our campuses, and everyone who teaches at General Assembly is a practitioner. They're not a professor who studies a field. They're a practitioner who does whatever they're teaching for a living. So they're experts at doing this. And so all the curriculum we build in-house, and we work with employers and work with the practitioners to do it. But basically what we're able to do is we're able to take that curriculum and that understanding of what makes a really powerful, really strong, and practical and outcome-oriented, most importantly, educational experience. Not just, okay, here's a piece of paper, here's a certificate, but what can take you from A and get you to B so that you have new skills that you can immediately put into practice in your job. And we started by doing that offline, right? Learning how that works. And by really figuring out how learning works most effectively, how outcomes-oriented education works most effectively offline, it actually gave us a fantastic foundation to then translate that into the online educational products that we've built. So, in some businesses do the other way. They start with online and they try to translate it offline. We started with offline, figured out what works in person, and then, all right, now that it's time to scale, now that we want to do blended learning models, now that we want to do online education models, we can take the curriculum and the learning styles and the experience and figure out how to translate that online in a broader context so that we can reach the millions of people around the world who might not live in one of our metro areas where we have one of our 15 campuses.
So kind of what did that traction look like? So I love that you painted that picture of kind of these brick and mortar, experiences before going online. But what did your growth kind of look like from your early communities? And really community was the foundation of GA as I understand it, and then building, a broader global education company.
Yeah, a long learning process for sure.
2 days, right?
Yeah, I've been working on General Assembly now for 6 years.
Wow.
We launched our first campus in New York City as a community hub for the startup scene in New York City, as well as that had selective co-working membership model that had social events and hackathons and kind of social interaction. and that also had shared learning experiences and kind of the earliest stages of this kind of outcome-oriented practitioner-led education that we operate now. And again, speaking to the experiment aspect, like that was very much an experiment. When we first started, we thought, all right, let's create a hub for the New York startup community and see what happens. We hit that point, we're like, wow, this is working. We realized, you know what, we actually have a much bigger vision here. This isn't just about creating a hub and a nucleus for all these people to come together and learn from each other and to socialize from each other and to collaborate with each other, but we actually could potentially be creating could create a whole new educational institution, that's relevant to this millennium, this new this new economy.
That wasn't in your original kind of construct of the company. That wasn't in your mindset. Was it? I'm just
right.
curious.
So that's what I'm saying. So the original, original, Vision 1.0, when we first started, that first experiment was, let's create just a community hub, one campus in New York that combines co-working, education, social events, and hopefully in a strong brand, which is crucial, and stir it all up and kind of hopefully create some magic out of it. And we thought, okay, we'll structure the financial model so that at least this thing will pay for itself, and it'll be a nice foundation for us to do whatever other next thing we want to do. And it just started to work so well, and especially the education aspect started to work so well that we were trying out we were trying out classes and workshops, and we actually learned early on. We thought, okay, we'll have some of our classes be practitioner led. We'll have practitioners that nobody knows by name, but who are good at what they do. We'll have them teach some classes, and then we'll have some professors from big name universities like Columbia and NYU come in and teach the future of media or history of the internet or something like that. Mm-hmm. But we'll use the big names plus the kind of practice aspect, and between the two, that'll be the secret sauce. Turns out, a few months in, nobody was showing up at the kind of more academic, more kind of professorial, maybe more intellectual classes, and people were just coming in droves to the practitioner-led, more skills-oriented classes and workshops. So what we discovered is wow, there's this whole skills gap, and we learned this once we were just doing it. We just had to start doing it because the original hypothesis of university professor meets practitioner, that's the gold. That wasn't the gold. There's half of it. So we then doubled down in the practitioner aspect of what we were doing and realized, okay, people are, as adults, you have limited time, you're looking to build your career, you want to grow, you want to level up, you want to change your profession or start a company or get a promotion or be better at what you do. And so you really are coming, when you want to learn stuff, it needs to be practical, it needs to be useful, it needs to be relevant, it needs to be taught by people who are in the industry, because that's where the expertise is. So much of what we teach is not taught in universities at all. Here's where maybe traditional university or traditional college leaves off, and then here's where the 21st century begins. And for the most part, college universities are about staying the same in terms of what they're offering, whereas the 21st century, in terms of what employers are demanding and what you need to be successful skills-wise in today's digital economy, is moving this way fast, which means that there's this big skills gap between when you graduate from college and the whole rest of your life and your career in the digital economy. And as we all know, especially when listening to this session, technology moves so fast, and employers evolve their needs and companies evolve their needs. So you should never be done learning. You should always be learning. Your education should always be in beta. And so now, as we think about the future of General Assembly, we want General Assembly to be an educational institution and a community at its core. Still the community piece has never left. That's always been the core. We want it to be an educational institution and a community that is always relevant for you and that you can come back to take a class, to take a workshop, maybe to teach a class, maybe to hire a graduate from, maybe to work with us, partner with us in some way for the rest of your life and the rest of your career. But it means that we need to evolve too as new programming languages are invented and as the world moves forward. We always need to stay current as well.
I think a lot of people assume that your base of customers by need are kind of millennials who want to get into coding, change careers. Is that kind of true, or are there is that need kind of cross segments in our in our world these days?
Yeah, so we've always, it's an interesting thing, right? Because you see companies fail that try to do too much too soon, try to be master of all trades, but then being jack of all trades and master of none, right? And so what we decided was we're going to focus our relevance, General Assembly relevance and expertise on basically kind of the combination of three big areas: technology, design, and business. And if something wasn't within those realms, it's probably not for us, or not something we want to focus on, because we want to be experts and really provide a lot of value in those fields. So that also is is true in terms of psychographic and demographic. I would say like the top of the bell curve, right? The kind of our biggest chunk of audience tends to be people in their 20s and 30s who are early to mid, maybe in their careers, and they're looking to level up. They're looking for skills that will make them more relevant. Maybe they don't exactly know their path yet. Maybe they haven't found their passion yet or their purpose yet. And General Assembly is a place to get inspired, to connect with like-minded individuals, to find opportunities, to have serendipitous encounters, which is a whole separate conversation, and to learn those practical skills that you can kind of move forward and level up in your career. At the same time, so that's like our bread and butter. At the same time, we do, and we've had 70-year-olds take some of our web development immersives and what other companies might call boot camps, which is amazing, and we've had younger folks do it as well. But it's good to know like who's your core audience, who are you really making a difference for in the largest sense, and we're also kind of exploring other audiences around that. The corporate education or enterprise education business is a good one. That started as just a small project, as kind of part of our business development team, and it's now grown to this whole corporate training model. And what's interesting now, it's actually all coming full circle, because as students graduate from one of our immersives, whether it's user experience design, Android development, web development, these are 3-month-long, approximately, programs that take you from 0 to employability. All these people coming out of these programs, most are looking for jobs. They're looking for new employment, a totally new field that they haven't, really been involved with before General Assembly, and they need to work with employers. And guess who employs a lot of developers, a lot of UX designers, a lot of people who we graduate, but large companies and employers who we're working with on the biz dev side, we're working with on the training side. So from an employer's perspective, General Assembly is really like a source of talent, an amazing talent solutions company, both for training their internal employees and also being a source of really diverse and interesting talent. It's not coming through your typical CS departments. Then it's not coming just through your Ivy League schools, but people coming from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all ethnicities, saying, I want to get into tech, I want to get into design, I want to get into business or entrepreneurship. General Assembly is a way I can do that without going back to college, and this can be my new lease on life, my new career path. And so the employers now are a big, big part of our audience and our kind of customer base, if you will. And we don't charge any recruiting fees. There's no like placement fees. We don't do that. But there is this like important connection between employers and our students, because jobs and employment is the biggest value that we can create for people. It's not about giving people a piece of paper. It's about creating real outcomes and opportunities for them that are tangible and that move their lives forward.
I mean, I hate to be hokey here, but in some ways, it's really the new American dream. I mean, if you can come to GA and get a skill set and then go back to employers in 6 months and get a job, that's incredible. So I'm in awe.
Thank you.
So let me start some questions from the audience, because we have quite a few coming in.
Cool.
One of them is about GA. So how do you guys choose what classes to feature at GA? Is it research-based? What skills or topics are relevant to your community?
Very good question. So we look for a few things. One, we see, okay, is this, let's say we get an idea, or someone suggests something, or we see a little bit of interest. What is this particular field, this topic, relevant to what we teach? If it's truck driving, not yet. We're not experts in that. Maybe we'll see. If we really expand. But like that's not our core competency, and so it's not really a brand fit or a curriculum fit or an expertise fit for us to play there.
Right.
Where if it's something like Android development, right? We partner up with Google and are one of their exclusive offline education providers to teach Android, which is awesome, and that's great. So that's one. The other is we look for demand on the talent side. So we have a network of now thousands and thousands of employers, as I was saying, who are hiring out of our of our graduate pool, but also who are helping us in consulting or providing feedback and just kind of everything from just like quick spit tests to actually getting their hands deep in our curriculum development process with our learning team. And so we understand, okay, hey, is this skill or this particular job in high demand? Are employers looking for basket weavers, en masse? Maybe not. If not, then we don't want to teach it. However, are you looking for junior web developers? Yes, everyone's looking for junior web developers. Everyone's looking for Android developers. Like, great, tons of talent demand on the employer side, which means great opportunities for students graduating out of these programs, which means that's a good, offering that we want to teach. And then third is we have this now base of hundreds of thousands of students who participated in something of ours, whether an online class or an in-person workshop or a whole 3-month-long immersive. And we have a great pulse of understanding, right, what are we hearing a lot of, and now we're operating at so much scale that if we're going to put the effort into building curriculum around a new course, we need to see interest from students, we need to see demand from employers, and we need to see relevance to our existing expertise so that we have a space to play.
Okay, and another piggybacking off of that, kind of where is GA going next? What are your kind of growth opportunities?
Yeah, sure. So I think I touched upon this partly, but really connecting the dots and really building up this like holistic vision of education to employment, outcomes-oriented education that is powered powered by a community of incredible people around the world, a community that is not just coming in for a 3-month class, but we want our alumni community to last for decades, if not more. We want people to think about General Assembly as a part of their life forever. As I said, your education should always be in beta, and so as we grow and as we build, most schools think of their student experience as like a 4-year period or a 2-year period, and for the rest of your life you're an alumni, and then they just ask you for money all the time, right? But that's
I'm familiar.
That's the old model. We can be a relevant community. If you find a relevant community and a relevant provider of inspiration and awesome skills that help you in your career and life, why would you ever leave? Right? Of course, you should always be involved in some capacity, and as you go through your career and your life, you'll be involved in different capacities as your needs change over time. But we want to be relevant and helpful for people for the rest of their lives, and be an educational institution that's building a lifelong community. But then the other aspect of that, as I said, is really kind of connecting the dots between employers and students, and really seeing them as two sides of the same coin. Employers in this day and age, with the future of education, are so vital, both in the curriculum development, in the actual hiring. Employers benefit from good practical education, right? Because that practical education creates talent, turns individuals into amazing practitioners that then the employers benefit from because they hire these people. So the employers need to be involved in this educational process. They need to have skin in the game. And as we see it, we can't be about students, we have to be about students and employers, and think about this in a holistic picture and a holistic community, because students who graduate also, as they get hired and go on to grow their careers, a lot of our students end up becoming entrepreneurs, some portion of them, who then are starting companies and are employers themselves, so that's the larger holistic vision. And down the line, as a final thing, we're also looking into other areas of expertise adjacent to what we do, looking at some different things we can't announce just yet, but expanding beyond just kind of our existing technology, design, and business verticals once we feel like we're ready for it.
Got it. So yeah, no, I work very closely with enterprises on this idea of talent, and it's something that is a true challenge for most really large companies that have been on the Fortune 500 for a good amount of time. And so, I can imagine that if you're wedging yourself in there, that's a sustainable advantage. How do you really truly get feedback from those companies? Is it through their, putting their money where their mouth is, or are you actively engaging them in a conversation on a regular basis?
Yeah, so it's quite a number of ways. So we have a whole curriculum development team. We have employer relations. We do a lot of in-person events where we'll have conversations. We do a lot of focus groups. We also have as we have a whole enterprise team that has hundreds and hundreds of enterprise clients, and our account managers, they're constantly talking to them and kind of getting little insights from them that we can then package up and share with other relevant parts of the team. And then, as I said, we're also doing a lot of online education now for large companies, so we can see what managers are interested in, what the individual contributors of these companies are interested in, and we really also try to do a lot of research. Like we're very plugged into government partnerships, research partnerships, so that we can really always stay ahead of, like, or at least stay abreast of the data around talent and around jobs and around, like, where these things are going in the market, in the employer and talent market, and that gives us insights into where we should be going to.
So no shortage of data, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, then the challenge is just processing it and
right.
turning it into useful insights and having it eventually come out to, like, okay, well, now we're going to create this course and spread it around the world.
I mean, that in and of itself must be the rigor, because data is rich, but using that data to actually drive action is where the challenge is. I can only
right. Yeah.
So
there's so much data
yeah.
information, but it's all about making it more bite-sized.
I could keep chatting with you for a very long time. I have one specific request that came in from the viewers, and that is Daybreaker going to come to Dallas? So, there's people out there who obviously want this phenomenon in their city.
Cool.
How can they get that?
Cool. So we'd love to come to Dallas. The first city in Texas we're coming to is Austin, and that will be later this year. So make the drive if you're up for it. So Austin will be first, but we're aiming to be in probably around 15 cities by the end of this year. Dallas is probably not on our radar for 2016, but definitely in consideration for 2017.
Okay, awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us after your wild party this morning. I can't wait to join one of your parties, and I'm sure everyone else feels the same way. That's it for today, and if you guys want to hear more from Matt, he will be joining us, or his team will be joining us at the Lean Startup Conference coming up this fall. Thanks very much, Matt, for your time.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed chatting with you today.
Yeah, lots more to discuss. Thank you. And thanks everyone who tuned in. I appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully it was somewhat educational and entertaining, possibly.
Awesome. Of course.
Cool.
Thanks again.
All right.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. This wraps up our show. Please join us again for the next one on June 2nd. In the meantime, visit leanstartup.co for more information on Lean Startup Week in San Francisco on October 31st to November 6th.